Yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
응답하라 여친. Go to the into the 실.
박 to the 경 to the 주. A. Jane, you've been
what
on
a
my
week
mind.
it's been.
How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Mm.
Yeah, we got back from California to visit my grandpa. So he was my last living grandparent. And in the episode that we released last week, I shared that he had been hospitalized. He just got sick with the flu, but he's 95 years old, and he just got so weak to the point that he couldn't swallow and couldn't take food by mouth. So then after about a couple of weeks in the hospital, it was time for my parents to decide whether or not to keep him alive, basically, or honor his advance directive, which, was signed a few years ago.
To let him
go. Yeah. So at that point, so today it's Wednesday, June 20th. So, sorry, Thursday, June 20th. Oh my gosh, like the days are
blurring.
Yeah, it's all a blur. But the last weekend, I got a text from my dad saying that they moved my grandpa to hospice.
Yeah.
And took him off all the, like his feeding tube and IVs, and that it was time to, say goodbye, essentially. And I had, the kids are still in school through the end of this week. So I was just kind of calculating,
right.
how to do it, how to make this work. But my dad had told me that the day that they moved him to hospice, he was the most alert. My grandpa was the most alert that he had been since the entire hospitalization, and that he was able to recognize everybody, and he recognized my brother and his wife when they visited him, called them by name. And so at that point, it was like 10 p.m. at night, but at that point I turned to Ben and said, we need to go now.
Yeah.
And take the first flight out, because he will just continue to deteriorate.
Right.
And he won't be there next weekend if we wait.
Such a good call.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And, I could tell that my parents we're the only family that lives out of state. So my sister and my brother and their families live locally in California, Southern California. And so they can come at a moment's notice. But I think my mom didn't want to put that pressure on us, knowing that, kids are still in school and all that. But we were, we just mobilized so fast, and we're like, okay, let's book flights. And the kids were in bed, but we had told them we might wake you up really early because we're going to go to California.
Wow.
So we booked the first flight out that morning. And I'm so glad we did, because as soon as we arrived at the airport, my dad picked us up and we went straight to the hospice care center. And my grandpa recognized me being there, recognized my voice, was able to grab my hand, hug me. And so he, at that point, that was Sunday. So the next day after he's been taken off of feeding tubes and all that, but he was still able to vocalize in Korean, it's time for me to go now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So we, it was just at that moment, I was so glad to be there. Yeah. And it was a reminder to me, it was not a burden at all for us to do, right?
No, because
it was just that decision of being there. And I'm so glad, because
I'm so proud of you for acting quick.
Yeah.
And just not hesitating and just going.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I love you, because you know how precious that moment is. And so you were just ready to, this is it. We gotta go.
And to me, the saddest part in all of this is I wish my grandpa didn't have to have those final days of of it just being so hard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was such a gift that he was conscious and had waking moments through all of it, so that he could hear from his family that we are here, we're with you, we're going to be with you as you make this transition. And so I was able to say 경주 왔어요, like into his ear, because he was very hard of hearing, and his hearing aid had broken just before he was hospitalized. So everything that we said, you had to say it like close to his ear. And we were there Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So every day we were able to go and see him. And right up until the last day on Tuesday, I don't know where he got the energy, but he, got his arm out of the blanket and, patted my head.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
Ben was taking pictures, and I couldn't bear to look at the pictures until after I came back to Seattle. Because I couldn't see, I was like, I don't think I can handle seeing his face. But I think that was such a precious time.
So precious.
And in the last episode, we talked a lot about the bitterness that had come out. And, even then, like I think we were all able to just accept it, because we knew that the bitterness wasn't the whole truth or the whole story. And we kind of knew this is not his, he doesn't truly believe. It doesn't
define him.
Yeah, and it doesn't define him
as a full, his all the facets of his life, and you have such a close connection to him. So it's a beautiful thing that you were able to say, this is not who our grandfather is.
That's not who he is. And so, and I think that was a big reason why my parents did not want us to spend too much time whenever we visited him
in those moments.
Yeah, they just wanted it to be pleasant. And when they heard, kind of off the wall things being said, they scooted us out, like, okay, let's go kind of thing. But, in those final days, there was no bitterness. And I could sense that my grandpa was very much at peace. And he did tell, I heard this from my dad, where he said in Korean, one of those days, like, everything is satisfactory. Like, 다 만족스럽다, And all he wanted to do, if he was able, was to hold hands, and then he would like grab our hands and put it on his cheek. And he just wanted that touch and connection. And so I had a lot of thoughts about how to say goodbye to somebody, and how I would like to leave the world too. And I think there's probably nothing better than
being able to hold your loved ones
hands
one last time.
Yeah, and being surrounded by family,
Yeah. I think people, it's really sad when an illness takes over someone, but like I've told you this many times, one of the most profound experiences that I had in my life was being around my father-in-law's as he was in his deathbed, and kind of like yours, he was battling cancer. I mean, but it was pneumonia that took, and then people don't go from cancer
in such a weakened state.
Yeah, it's usually like, that's why flu is so deadly to an older population or someone who's sickly, right? And it was that brought him into the hospital. And we had a feeling when we got hospitalized, like I think all of us had this feeling like, what if? And that's where he didn't leave. He got hospitalized, and then he didn't leave that hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But it was before COVID, right before COVID hit, and we were allowed to all be in that room.
Oh my gosh.
The few days that he was in there, and they were like, you know what, he's not getting better.
Yeah.
And so we had to have that conversation. You know, what do you want for him? And we had to even like, and because he was very coherent, you know, we don't want to bring up sad things, but at that time he really accepted. And once he took that acceptance, there were family visiting, his brothers, his cousins, just the room was always full. And looking back and also hearing you right now, it just really takes me back to those moments. I think about, as sad as someone going with an illness is, especially like if they've been battling cancer, or you think that's not the way you want to go. But those last few days where he was surrounded by people, everybody holding his hand, touching his face, giving him one last hug. I just remember thinking, wow, what a beautiful last days.
I agree.
And his, just every day the room was full. And my kids were there, and they were on his bed, on his, you know, just loving on him. And I remember thinking, as sad as this battle has been, he got to know how much love. And his father, my husband's father, always felt like he was the black sheep of the family, and always felt like he was a disappointment internally. Of course, he was not in our eyes, and he was most spectacular, but I think he struggled with that aspect of his identity a bit. And I just, and the few things, I mean, towards the end, he just kept saying, you know, I just wanted to see them grow up, our children. And that was really heartbreaking. But
how old was he?
I think he was just like 70.
Not too old,
young. But at the same time, listening to your story about your grandfather who's 95, right? And then there's that stage where the bitterness takes over. There's like also a fine line of like, how are you living?
Absolutely.
You know? Like, we all think that we want to like live forever. But the truth is, in your like, especially if you get into the 90s, I've been around when I worked at senior citizen housing and stuff. It's very lonely.
It's so lonely.
To be that old, and then all your friends have gone. So yeah, it's and then I think that's where the bitterness can creep in, like when you feel alone and isolated. So there's a fine line of like living a healthy, able-bodied life. Versus you feel trapped in your body. Even when you have like an illness, or when I had like my leg, the Achilles ruptured, and I was like bedridden. It's such a terrible feeling to feel immobilized, or to feel like you can't do things for yourself. And if you start to feel burdened by that, I think it can easily, or if you start to think you're a burden to other people.
Right. And it could be a mix of all that. You know, it's my mom said that a lot this last week, was she felt that both of her parents, you know, faced untimely deaths. And
your mom's parents. How so?
Her mom, my grandma on my mom's side, passed away very young, 60, from lung disease. And then my grandpa passed away almost 10 years ago, but he wasn't that old either. And that was through an accident. So it was a very unexpected and sudden. And so she always envies people whose parents, you know, now the age that they're at now, when her friends' parents are living and healthy. But with the last couple of years with my dad's dad, my grandpa, she had a lot of thoughts about, you know, what is the quality of life? Is
Right.
it worth living until that age
Right.
when you are, you know, have distorted memory or bitterness toward family?
Because it took such an ugly turn.
Yeah,
Like to
yeah.
a point where you didn't recognize.
Right. And even leading up to this last hospitalization, I think they had limited visits and limited contacts
Yeah.
because of that tension. And it's just such a blessing that all of that dissipated this
Yeah.
week.
I
you
was
know?
incredibly worried
Mm-hmm.
for you because I was like, man, I just hope that the last days with your 할아버지 is not going to be the way he's been, but more to his how you've known him to be for most of his life, which is this loving grandparent. And it relieves my soul to hear that you had that. It's a gift.
Yeah. And I think I would have been, I probably would have not had that closure if we didn't go, or if we, you know, if I had just resigned myself to the fact that, oh, well, we can't travel until
or
after
we've
he
already
passes.
lost him
Yeah.
too. You know, if you already resigned to the fact that that's not our grandfather anymore.
Right. And I'm so glad because this was the only grandparent I was able to say goodbye to. Ugh. And I was like, that is rare, which told me like how rare it is that you can say goodbye.
It's such a gift.
It is such a gift because a lot of times you don't get that. It's unexpected, and that makes the grieving a lot harder. But this time, you know, I think there was a lot of like the 5 stages of grief. We hit the acceptance, you know, because we had that lead up and we had several days to say goodbye.
There's such a beauty in that moment. I was so worried for which grandfather you were going to get when you went on this, you know, because I was like, oh my gosh, I hope he can. Did he recognize he had not been himself and told you guys anything about that?
I don't think so.
He just was like, hey. It was like he was in some thick fog and then he like emerged as himself again.
Yeah. Wow. Where he said only good things. Just only good things, complimentary things, well wishes for our lives.
And how are your? I'm sure how are your parents?
They're okay. My mom really struggled with the decision to take him off, like the feeding tube and all that.
She is such a good mother.
Because I think what was
daughter-in-law, I should say.
She is a good daughter-in-law. I don't think I could ever
have endured what she's
endured.
They're built different.
Truly built different.
Yeah,
because from a different era.
Yeah. she was a loyal.
Yes.
Your props to your mom. She is such a strong person.
I know.
Like I feel, by women like her, I feel like, oh, I'm so weak. I could never, you know.
I mean, she's human too, right? So I did not appreciate or could not appreciate or recognize everything that she endured or put up with until I became like a daughter-in-law myself and a mom myself, right? But yeah, it was very interesting. I had a lot of thoughts watching my parents the last
We have
weekend.
to have your mom on our podcast. Like, I cannot wait to meet her.
Would love
she
to be
inspires
on
me
it.
so much.
Aww,
and you are a living testament to how wonderful your mom is. Like, you just have such a good head on your shoulders. 진짜 어머니
No,
덕이야.
you know what my mom said about you though, because she listened to, I had both of my parents listen to the episode that we released last week, because we talk a little bit about just the family drama and the tensions, and I didn't want to release it knowing that my grandpa is now at the time on his deathbed.
You're so considerate.
And so I just wanted to have them listen. And I told them, we don't have to release it. but if we do release it, I think it's timely to do it now, but I want you to listen to it. And so she did say that
you asked.
You know, obviously the ugly parts is not, you're not proud to share that, right? But she said that's, you know, it's okay to share that because it's the truth, it's life. And she so appreciated just the commentary and the perspective that you provided. And she just said Ellen has such a deep understanding of just life, you know. And
that may be like one of the greatest
so she actually listened to it a couple of times before it was released.
Wow.
Yeah. And she had my dad listen to it too. And so I felt really, you know,
that is
okay
one
with
of the best things I've ever
with
heard.
releasing that.
Thank you to your mother.
Yeah.
너무 고마워요, 어머니.
But I think it helped her process things. It obviously helped me process a lot of things. And because it makes me like truly, I'm not, like I just have a more challenging time with feelings and like being in feelings.
You do.
And the entire time, the 3 days that we were in California, Ben asks me, "How are you doing? How are you feeling?" And I was like, "I'm feeling fine.
I know
I'm okay."
because I know that because we do this podcast, it seems like, you know, feelings are flowing out of Jane. She is not a feelings person. Like she doesn't, you have to like pull things out of her.
And I was like, wow, I get this from my dad. Cause when we were in in my grandpa's room, there were always so many of us in there.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where it was just me and my dad and my grandpa. Wow. Because my dad was playing, he was playing hymns on his phone and placing it next to my grandpa's ear. And I don't know where the other family were. I think more people were coming in. So people had, my mom had gone to meet my brother and bring them in. So there was like maybe a minute where it was just me and my dad on the same side of the bed with my grandpa. And I just kind of, you know, hugged my dad and like squeeze his arm, and he looks at me, he's like, "I'm fine." He nods and he's like, "I'm fine." And I just thought, wow, the two of us standing here.
That's so me. You are.
But it gives me understanding of like, I'm just built that way, you know? And
I think and you know, that's the thing I've learned to appreciate. We need the varieties of people to make it. Like, as much as I complain when someone is like not very forthcoming or not as like blunt as I am or whatever, I'm like, okay, you can only take so much. Mm-hmm. If I exist, then you need a balance in this world, which is why we work so well.
Yes.
Because you ground me. Mm-hmm. You're someone that grounds people with your steadiness. And I think it balances out someone like me who's very emotional. I mean, and we've had this discussion where I just like I wear my heart out on my sleeves. Yeah, I'm almost too out there, and you being around you, I think, you know, has also kind of helped me to balance myself out a little bit and not jump into like, you know, people's arms right away. Yeah. Which, you know, life is about balance.
It is.
And I think we, on paper, like nobody would think that we're like the best of friends.
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, yeah. Like, do they expect all your friends to be just like you?
I do feel like no, I don't know. Like, I do feel like there's an expectation with me that I kind of resent. I mean, I don't know. Resent is such a strong word. I think people expect me to be a certain way all the time.
Yeah.
And that's such...
No one is that way.
Right.
No one is all the time
And people find it hard to
same way.
believe that I love just being at home.
Yeah.
They're always like inviting me to
Uh-huh.
things and they just expect I'll be there. I'm like, actually, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I love being at home. Like,
Yeah.
if you ask me, I know, I feel like celebrities say this all the time. Like, Taylor Swift is like, I just like being home with my cats. And I'm like, okay, no, not cats, but like, I just love being home with my boys, my husband. And my husband, even though in everybody else's eyes is like a super introvert, he will talk his ear off. My ear off. He will talk my ear off. And there's like endless conversations we have.
Yeah.
And I just love listening to him talk and letting me know all his thoughts. It's just like those are very precious moments to me. But I imagine that's kind of like that with you guys. You know, Ben's sort of my energy, and he's got a lot of thoughts to tell you. And you know, I always tell you like, oh, Ben 재밌다. Like he has these like looks that I'm like, I know what he's thinking. You know. We're like in a way two pieces. He's way more subdued me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he's a pretty subdued person.
Yeah, but he's got the funnies. He's hilarious in his own right. Yeah. But yeah, like there's a balance. And I feel you make me feel so calm.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah, you make
I'm
me
so glad.
I feel just so at ease.
I used to hate when people would say that about me because I'm like, because
Why?
I'm like, that's so boring. Like that's like how is that a good thing?
No.
Well, actually, my mom will get a chuckle out of this. I heard so much growing up. Oh, 경주는 너무 얌전해요.
Oh, that is the compliment that I wish I had gotten.
But I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't
like,
think I'm a 얌전한 person. I'm like, I'm 얌전해 because I'm in this setting where I'm at church or 얌전해. How would you define that? Like calm, like very collected.
Gosh.
I don't know. But I remember
don't say that in English.
Yeah, they don't say it in English. So I remember asking my mom when I was a kid, 얌전한 게 좋은 거야? Like, is it a good thing?
Really?
Yeah, and my mom's like, it's not really a good thing. I don't know what she expected of me, but I think she always wanted me to be a little bit more outgoing, a little bit more risk-taking, adventurous, because I was that kid who would sit next to her and just like sit next to her because I was
so wild because my
shy and
my mom was like, 좀 얌전하지 집에 가 씨발. 왜 그렇게 시끄러? Like, why can't you have some poise? Why can't you have some calm? You're so freaking loud.
Those two girls grew up to be great friends and feed off of each other's energy.
Yeah. And by the way, Jane is so fun. Like.
No, you don't have to say that. Just
you are though. You know, I was actually not gonna lie. I was surprised when you come out late to kick it. Yeah, and we were like drinking, having fun. I was like, "Girl, she can. She can hang.
I could do it in doses, right?"
Yes.
And so, but yeah, I mean,
that is
it is
wild though.
Balance.
That a Korean mother was like, "You're so held together. I want you to get a little." Turn up.
Yeah, she never said it like that, but she was like, she's like, it's not that. She's like, it just means 얌전해. It doesn't mean it's not a good or a bad thing.
얌전해 is such a compliment, especially towards a woman or a girl.
Oh my
얌전해
goodness,
means like you're like wife material. Oh, 너무 like.
But what would bother me more than 얌전해 is like 착하다.
Really?
Which is good because I'm like, no, I'm not. Like,
meanwhile, I'm like,
you're just
everybody thinks I'm such a bitch. I'm like, why don't people think I'm a nice person? I get labeled. I feel like people think, Ellen's so blunt. Ellen loves to say it like it is. I'm like, but I'm not like out to be hateful.
Oh no,
I just
never
feel like
hateful.
I feel like I get, wow, that's so crazy that you're offended by being told that you're kind.
Yeah. Because I'm like, don't expect that from me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm human.
Yeah, because I think the downside to that is that you're a pushover.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You kind of feel like, what, you don't think I'll have
I have to like live
say?
into that.
Yeah. You think I'm always going to like look past your, bad behavior. No, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And you're not.
And most of the time it's like, even as a kid, I wouldn't outwardly say or do things, but my mind is always like,
You're like, I see you.
Yeah, working and thinking, right?
And then I'm the one that's like, I see it and I will say it.
Yes. I was that kid who would, listen to all the scolding
take it all
from my
in.
parents, take it all in, process it, and think, how would I do this if I was the mom?
Oh my God, that reminds. And this is why I say you're like Adonis. Adonis, God, he told me this. Is like, I don't know why it came up, but he was like, I'm actually very devious. And I said, who would even think to say something
who
like
would
that?
say that?
He goes, well, I remember growing up and my brother, both my brothers, the older one and the younger one, would always be getting in trouble. And he would observe it and be like, I'm not going to be like them.
Yeah.
Like they're so, and he said that I also noticed that my younger brother was so bad at like getting himself together. Like he could not keep his room clean. So you know what I did? I said, what did you do? He said, I would clean up his room for him.
Wow.
I'm like, why would you do that? He goes, because I knew that he would become to be an incapable man. And that he wouldn't be able to know how to clean up after himself. And kind of true. But that's so like, that's so diabolical. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm
as
diabolical.
a kid.
Yeah,
as a
who
kid.
thinks like that?
I know.
He's like, I'm gonna make him incapable.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
enable him.
I'm gonna provide him a cleaning service so he won't know what it's like.
So he won't ever be able to stand on his own. Like, why does that still sound so wholesome?
And he, you know how he would scare his brother? By chasing him with the vacuum cleaner. I was like, what's wrong with He was like, yeah. And the funniest thing, he's like, yeah, I used to want to be a butler when I was growing up because our house was so dirty. And I would be the one cleaning. And I would be like, I wanted to go around with the glove. And I was like,
yes.
What's wrong with you? But
so is he the cleaner in the house?
He is. But not going to lie, we're just so freaking busy.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
See, it's about balance.
You know what? I will say, it's a disaster, but it bothers me more than him. He's like, we have busy lives. He's very accepting.
Yeah.
Like, you and I are always busy doing something. So if the house has to go, so I do hire a cleaner.
Yeah.
It's just to help manage the chaos. But on a different note, did you know there's like, so it's actually it kind of ties in. The idea, you know how your mom and your parents were talking about, do we talk about this stuff? Like, but it's real life, right? So then there are these like creators that show their dirty house. And say, you know what? This is how we actually live. But it's like so dirty. It's like maggots growing out of the food pile dirty, right? And you're like, yeah, you want reality, but that's going a bit
extreme.
Yeah, it's like there's a fine line.
There's a fine line
in everything that you do, and the internet will tear you apart if you freaking. And so, at first, it's like, yeah, show us your real homes, and then once someone was like, let me show you, and then it's just like actual. There's a difference between dirty and then there's filth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's like
messy
versus like, oh my God,
health
I think
hazard
I just
filth.
Yeah. I might have stepped on poop.
Yeah.
Like that's gross.
No.
That's toxic, like literally toxic environment. And so then these influencers like, let me show you that I actually clean. You know, it's like, oh my God, you can't live your life for other people.
No, you can't.
You just have to be in the moment and process the things. And sure, you can share, as we have done.
Yeah.
But it's like once you put on that it's like a show, people are so quick to get that.
Yeah.
And we live in a culture where like reality shows are not real. So people are quick to pick up on manufactured reality.
Yeah.
And that's why I love what we do on this podcast, because we don't really plan.
No.
Sometimes there's been episodes that have gone whoop, whoop, like literally our producer's like, that went everywhere. But we just decide, let's have our real talk. I mean, this conversation, I didn't know where it was gonna go because I hadn't talked to you. I was so afraid that the last moments of your grandfather has been the way he's been, and I was like, God, I hope you get to see him in the way you've known him. So this was such a relief to hear.
Yeah.
And it's such a precious gift. You're gonna hold this moment for so long.
I think so.
It's gonna be a reminder about. I go back to. There's been so many. I think I found my calm after my father-in-law's passing. Seeing that really changed my brain chemistry. You know, people say there are certain moments that can do that to you, experiences or people. It's probably one of the moments that I think about the most in life. Whenever there's some kind of craziness or whatever, I think, you know what, is this gonna define me?
Yeah.
It's in the bigger picture of life. Am I gonna be in my deathbed thinking about these things? No, I'm gonna want to hold all the people that I've loved. I'm gonna want them near and dear to my heart to be up. You know, that's what it comes down to.
It does. And you know, even though my grandpa didn't have he only said good things and he had accepted that this is the end for him. I think all of us wished that his other family could be there too.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my dad was informing his two brothers, his older brother and younger brother.
Oh, they're estranged from him.
They're estranged, yeah. And there was acceptance on both sides, but now it'll just be on them to heal from that.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that, there wasn't that full reconciliation, but it really just, I don't know.
You have to be open to it. I think, was it in his bitter years that they had the falling outs?
Yeah.
Or was it even before?
It was a little bit before, but it was just like long drawn out. And there were a few attempts, I think, to reconcile, but they just didn't get along, and there's hard feelings still. And I wonder if my grandpa had the wherewithal to think all those thoughts too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But really seeing him there and helping somebody, sitting with someone as they're dying, you realize like so many things don't matter.
Yeah. It melts away.
It does melt away. It sounds very cliched, but when it's in the present and it's happening to you and you're in the middle of this tension, you just don't think there's anything that will heal or restore that relationship. And yet, it's like it's complex and simple at the same time, where it's like when you're
I think there's like an Einstein
the world
saying about simple and
very
easy.
Little. Yeah.
I think I don't know the quote, but
I think that's what I struggled to put words to, because as I was sitting there, I'm just thinking, like, is this all there is?
I want to look it up because it's very relevant to what you're talking about. Funnily, is that a word?
Yeah.
Why does it not sound right? Funnily enough, I actually heard it watching tennis. Let's see. Make things as simple as possible, but no simpler.
Huh.
But that wasn't actually the quote.
Is that who said that?
Einstein.
Oh.
There was something about like how he was saying I thought the quote was like, making things simpler is like the best way, but it's like as complex as it gets. Something like that. It was like, simple is the best way to go, but at the same time, it is like the hardest thing you can do.
It is the hardest thing you can do.
That's what the takeaway from, they were talking about it. The reason I picked up on it was I was watching tennis, and, this player was struggling, and they were like, he needs to change his strategy and to simplify, but to get that awareness is the most complicated thing in such a hard setting as a Grand Slam finale.
Right.
And so I was like, wow, that's like deep to make things. And it's taken me, I mean, we've talked about this many times, like I've really come to it in my 40s. And as much as I wish I had that in my 20s or 30s, you can't. I think you have to kind of go through it.
Yeah.
So I look back, I'm like, I lived my 20s kind of like recklessly, dangerously, like all in sort of way. 30s, we were having, well, you're still in your 30s, kids and it's like that in itself is so much. And now like the kids are kind of, you're entering your 40s. It's like they found their grounding, they're kind of becoming their own people, and you're like, okay, now you can sit back and enjoy their growth.
Yes.
And getting to that, and by default, in a way, you have to simplify to survive, like, because there's so much going on,
right?
And it's been, I hope to only grow wiser from where we are now, but life, you've done it. I've seen it. You've simplified a lot.
I think so.
I
hope so.
I think you have a lot going on in terms of what's asked of you. You have so many brand deals on your plate, so many like things from the schools. You do a lot more than I ever choose to do. I'm always like, that's a no for me. I'd rather just not. But you have decided to push back on things and really simplified your life. I think I'm so proud of you for that.
Oh, thank you. And I had like a lot of thoughts too before I went to California. Like, oh, I'm gonna have to do this and this and this. And in the end, I'm like, why, Jane? Why were you so anxious about it? Like, you made it work, then you came back, and
you did so good though. You were like, we go now.
Yeah, that was the spontaneity is not my
nature. I know, but
usually
you were like,
I'll stress.
Did you get this gut feeling?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Listen to your gut.
Yeah,
and
it
spoke to you. That is,
and I think I heard that moment too from my mom, because I was talking to her at night, the night before we flew out, and I was just thinking out loud, like, oh, this is what our schedule looks like. I'm trying to see if, and the whole time I'm like, I fully recognize how ridiculous this conversation is, because life is life, right? You can't schedule,
right? Yeah.
You can't schedule life. And so, my mom, so I said, okay, I'm just trying to, we obviously want to go. I'm just trying to think about the best time. My mom says, do you want to just come? At least, just you. And I said, I could do that. And then we were going along in the conversation, and I said, you know what? Like, I was listening to my mom talk about my grandpa and how he was, recognizing family members and talking. And I just got this sense, and I said, you know what? I think we all have to go. And she said, okay, you're right. Why don't you all come?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I needed.
She didn't want to pressure you.
Yeah, she didn't want to pressure me.
She wanted you to grasp what you were at. And then when she was like, that's how I feel too.
Because every conversation that I had, and I spoke with her almost every day leading up.
Oh, she was like, not yet.
Yeah.
Right.
And I said, right. I said, should I come? And she said, not yet. We're still deciding whether, like, what to do to,
your mom
keeping
so
on.
Wise.
So I think we got the timing
just
right. Yeah.
Right.
And it was intuitive, even though I was looking for all the signs. And
I was there all the days when my father-in-law was hospitalized, but the moment he passed, I missed it, and I felt really upset because he was like, oh, I think Adonis called me. He's like, babe, I think this is it. Even though we had been in the hospital knowing it was coming, but the moment he was like, I think this is gonna be it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going, because the kids I was gonna drop the kids, put them in school and then go back to the hospital, right? So I got the kids and we were driving.
Yeah.
Right when I got to us, he's like, babe, he passed. And I was devastated. But he later told me, I'm glad you didn't see that actual final moment, because Adonis could not sleep for days.
Oh, I fully believe that.
Yeah.
And I think that was a gift too.
Yeah.
In my grandpa's case, and I think with my other two grandparents, it is like they were not there for that exact moment.
Yeah.
But that in itself, I think is can be a gift.
So the thing that my husband talks about, like, he kind of like bolted and looked around, and there was a little bit of this very human like terror, like I'm going, like, right at this moment, sort of like fear. And that really shook my husband for a while. And all of them. And they were so like, oh, he's scared.
Yeah.
And I think that's also very human.
It's so human.
People love to glamorize death, and be like, oh, the last moment you go, like, accepting it. He did accept it.
Yeah.
But in that
you
final second,
Mm-hmm.
to see that fear of like the unknown, like, this is it.
Yeah.
He was like explaining to me, like, I'm glad you didn't see that.
Yeah.
Because that was really hard for him to get over.
Yeah.
And I told him, he was so loved, and he wanted to love more.
Yes.
And that is what we knew of him. So I think it just means that he knew what he was leaving behind, but that he is, I know. And after COVID happened, and you hear all these stories of families that couldn't even say their goodbyes.
Right.
Oh, we talk. You know how devastating that would be.
I know
that you were locked out. I mean, children not being able to say bye to their parents, like little children, not knowing, and they're
yeah.
There is, I know you believe in God. I believe in God, even though we've had our issues with churches and all that, the structures of religion. But I think ultimately, anybody that is faith-based, religion-based, there's moments where you go, why would God do this to someone, the suffering and all this stuff? But there are those losses make you realize how precious, how rich life is, and without that, if life was this continuous, blissful, never-ending circle, you would not be able to truly appreciate what a privilege this whole thing is. Right. I mean, yeah, like those COVID stories, I was so thankful that my father-in-law went when he did, surrounded with so much love. And you never think like you think that's how it should be, but you don't think like, wow, like, what if you don't get that opportunity?
Right. You take it for granted. And I know Ben's grandmother passed right in the middle of the pandemic. Oh. So, we were told don't travel because.
Was he close to his grandmother?
He was fairly just like my grandfather. Like these were his grandparents on his father's side are the ones that he grew up with because they were in the States. Whereas his mom's side,
so
they were in Korea. Yeah. So we were close enough in that we saw them every time we went to California.
Yeah.
And so she had seen, Ruby too, like when she was about 4. But that was such a sad time where nobody could be around. It was like 10 people, like the guidance in California was like 10 people at the funeral max.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
We survived that.
I know.
It's so crazy.
Well, we were so all scared about my grandpa surviving COVID in a nursing home, right? We were like, why did we let him go there?
Because that was one of the first things.
Yeah, and he moved there in 2019. And we're like, why did we do that? But he was adamant that he was going to do that while he still could and enjoy. So that was his choice.
Wow.
So those years were hard, but my grandpa thrived. I don't know if I told you about this, but he thrived during COVID. Because he liked having his alone time and having his schedule and,
honestly, I think that's what I would do too. I would want to be in a retirement home, like, with other, I mean, obviously a really good bougie one.
Yeah.
But because, like the idea of burdening your family because you can't get around or something like that, it's just like, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah. But I remember like visiting him there, like during COVID with mask on, because in 2020 we drove down to California and we stayed for a long time. And I would ask him like, oh, how is it here, 할아버지? And he's like, oh, 난 괜찮아. Like, I'm having fun. Like,
재밌어.
재밌어.
사는 게 재밌어, 요즘에.
난 괜찮아,
Having fun.
Yeah, he had a very like routine, and he was very like mentally alert, even until his last years. But yeah, there were a lot of families that could not say goodbye during COVID, and
I'm
so
that
makes
thankful
it hard. Yeah,
that you got to.
Yeah, I'm very very
closure.
thankful. So thankful.
Listening
that's
to your gut.
The story. Yeah,
that's the takeaway. Listen to your gut.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you, Jane.
Oh, thank you.
I worried about you. I was like, oh my gosh. You were like texting me like, oh, I forgot to write the summary. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was right now. Are you okay?
You're like, I'm not talking about the podcast or work. I'm talking about, are you okay? So yeah, thank you for letting me process, the last week. Because
you don't have to thank me. I'm so happy to know that your grandfather, you got to see him as your 할아버지, the man that you knew.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Listen to your gut. Gut health is like on everybody's mind these days too. Different note, okay?